Good evening. A slightly late night recording for the message this time. This message is taken from Genesis 4, verses 1 to 16. I'll read that for us. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later she gave birth to his brother, Abel. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, and Abel brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favour on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favour. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. This is the word of the Lord. It appears that the world is waiting nervously to see what will happen between Russia and the Ukraine. Many remember that World War I essentially started from a single assassination. What will happen if fighting erupts in Eastern Europe? Will the fighting be able to be contained, or will the situation escalate? Of course, the escalation of tensions, sometimes far beyond what would be normally expected, isn't only seen at the international and national level. I remember hearing my dad telling me about making a trip to my grandmother and his sisters popping in while he was there. One aunt made a cup of tea for the other, but as she brought the tea, her finger ended up in the tea because of the way she was carrying the cup. My other aunt asked, "Could I have another cup of tea without a finger in it, please?" To which the first aunt replied, "Are you saying I've got dirty hands? I've just cleaned them." At this point, I think comments were made about her whole house being dirty, and so she wouldn't know what clean was. And let's just say it continued to escalate until one of them went off in a huff. Some of us will feel like that, feel like the situation escalating quickly when we read the first half of Genesis 4. We've just had Adam and Eve disobeyed God's command not to eat of the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And the next thing, we've got one brother killing another. That's escalating quickly. There's quite a bit, even in just half a chapter of Genesis, so we're only going to be able to highlight the main points. The scene is set with Adam being intimate with his wife Eve, and she gives birth to Cain. Eve acknowledges the Lord's good help in bringing this blessing into her life. We're then told that Eve gives birth to Cain's brother, Abel. We're not told whether there are other brothers or sisters, but I think it's likely, and I think that these two are simply highlighted because they're the focus of the ensuing narrative. As we focus on Cain and Abel, we are immediately faced with a question as to why would the Lord look favourably upon Abel's offering of an animal, but not Cain's offering of grain? Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The the Lord looked with favour on Abel and his offering. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favour. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. There's been a large amount of speculation as to what the issue here was, and I found some of the suggestions, to be honest, quite baffling. There's nothing in the text to indicate that being a nomadic herder has God's approval, whereas being a settled tiller of the soil doesn't. Much less that God simply prefers the smell of roasted meat to the smell of roasted grain. One of the most common suggestions is that because sin results in death, then the sacrifice should also involve death. However, this appears to be reading later Old Testament commands back into this story. And we're not told that this is a sacrifice, certainly not a sacrifice for sin, only that it is an offering, and grain would later be listed as an acceptable Thanksgiving offering for the Israelites. Other scholars have said that we don't need to have a reason for God's choice here. This is simply an act of God's sovereignty as to who finds God's favour and who doesn't. Certainly the nation of Israel is later told that they were selected by God only because of his grace and not because of anything that they had done to merit it. However, while I read in the scriptures that God does work sovereignly to bring people to himself, I think God's comments to Cain count against it on this occasion. In verse 6 and 7 we read, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it.'" While it's possible that the sin referred to is just Cain's anger at his brother, I think that it's more probable that Cain has done something sinful which has resulted in his offering not being accepted in the first place. And then his anger at his brother's offering being accepted. And then he is angry at his brother's offering being accepted while his is not. So what was Cain's sinful action in this offering? The only real hint in the text is that Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil, whereas Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. I was reading this passage with an Indonesian Christian, and he commented that in Javanese culture, that's actually quite a strong statement. It's as if Cain just brings some stuff, whereas Abel brings the best. It's best both in terms of first fruits, and in terms of choice parts of it. My friend's cultural insight helps us to see an indicator which points to the real issue here, and it concerns the heart motivation of Cain. This is what the writer of the letter to the Hebrews identifies. In Hebrews 11 verse 4 we read, "By faith Abel brought a better offering than Cain did. By faith he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offering, and by faith Abel still speaks, even though he is dead." We're not told explicitly how Cain lacked faith when he made his offering. Maybe Cain was simply going through the motions, seeking to impress people by putting out something but actually holding back the best. Or perhaps he desired to control or bribe God. While we can't know for certain, we know that his heart was not really in it. We still have this issue today. People often make grand offerings or promises of offerings to God, should only God do this one thing for them. And that one thing may be rescuing a marriage, saving a child, providing them with a job, or just getting them a parking spot. Whatever it may be, God is not to be bribed or controlled by any offering we can give, and thinking like this displays a failure to truly trust God. We also see this in the church, particularly if I speak on money and giving. When I speak on the topic of money and giving, I don't want to give the impression in a sermon that we want people to give just so that we can look good in front of others. Likewise, I want to challenge us to be like Abel and to give our very best to God, I'm conscious that will look differently from one family to the next. Some of us can give far more than others, and yet that large amount is really just something that I found to pop in the offering plate. I had a friend who was working as a highly skilled and qualified IT professional, and we were having a meal together. At the end of the meal, he said, I'll pay. I tithe more than you earn. On the other hand, I know that there are others who can't give a large amount of money to the church, but they're giving the very best of what they have. They give the first fruits and the fat portions, even if it doesn't look as impressive as what somebody else is giving. Here's the thing. I don't want to know how much people give to the church. And I don't know how much people give, and I don't really want to know. Yes, I have bills to pay and a family to feed, but God has never left me without. I want to express genuine faith in God and give generously, and even sacrificially. Myself, and I want to do this myself, and I encourage you to do the same. Not because we'll be bribing or controlling God, but because he is so wonderfully worth it, and we delight to honor him. When we do this, we don't earn his favor, but rather we demonstrate our faith. Returning to Genesis 4 and picking up again God's comments to Cain, we come to one of the most important points this story makes. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." One of the critical points this story makes is that Cain has a choice. Following on from the account of Adam and Eve's sin, we know that Cain, like all humanity, is now born into a fallen world. Sin marks and penetrates us. It infects us. However, Cain having a choice means that he can't say, Adam and Eve are the reason why I sinned. It's all their fault. All humanity may have fallen with Adam and Eve, and yet there is a way in which we still have choice and are still responsible for our actions. What's also very interesting to note is that God reminds Cain of his choice after Cain had presented a faithless offering. It's not just that we are fallen in Adam and Eve and sin infects us, we also do acts of sin ourselves, and yet we still have a choice. Past failures do not destroy completely our ability to make choices. Sin is right there, crouching like a lion ready to pounce. Sin wants to control our lives, but we must exert mastery over it. We must make the choice not to sin and or not to continue to sin. I don't know about you, but I know that there are some nights when I've come home and I've collapsed on the couch and I've put on the movie, and I've noticed at some point that the movie is too violent, or has excessive swearing, it objectifies people, particularly women, or has any number of other issues which would cause me to think, this isn't good for me. Let's turn this off. And it's at that moment, it's as if sin pounces, aiming for control, by saying, you've already started, you can't stop now, you've already lost. This little story reminds us that we continue to have a choice. Neither our circumstances nor our past failings require us to make the same or to make equally bad choices going forward. Now let me add, before I sound too much like a middle-class Liberal voter who champions individual responsibility and rejects the impact of societal structures, that we as Christians and as the church should be working to make it as easy as possible for people to make right choices. At the individual level through to the governmental level, we should be involved in working to help people have sufficient freedom from baggage and bondage that they can think clearly to make correct choices. Now we of course know what Cain's choice was. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out into the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Things have escalated, though perhaps maybe not as quickly as we originally thought. We know now that Cain was already lacking in faith towards God. He was already begrudging of his brother being looked on with favor, and he had already been warned by God that he had a choice to make. Cain was invited to take control of the sin that wanted to control him, but instead he gave into it. We then read that just as the Lord had called Adam in the garden when Adam had sinned and was hiding from God, so God would expose Cain and what Cain had done. Although Adam and Eve had sought to avoid responsibility, they did admit what they had done. This time, though, Cain won't even acknowledge what he did. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The hypocrisy here is ripe. Cain had been jealous of his brother. Noting Abel's approval, and even some of the terminology in the Hebrew language has the idea of Cain eyeing his brother, keeping an eye on him, looking for an opportunity. Now, though, Cain claims not to see Abel at all. Cain may be trying to hide from what he has chosen to do, but things escalate quickly. In response to this hypocrisy and deceit, God declares to Cain that he knows precisely what has happened. The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Cain has made the wrong choice, and Cain will have to face judgment. The consequences for Cain have similarities to what Adam and Eve experienced. Whereas Adam and Eve were cast out from Eden and the land would only produce crops through toil, Cain is driven from the land, and the land won't even respond to his labor because it had received his brother's blood. If you were a judge in a murder trial, I think you would say that when it comes to sentencing, that Cain still doesn't express remorse for what he has done. Cain is only thinking about himself. Listen to his words. Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you have driven me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." So Cain, who killed his brother, is now worried that he is in danger. In all honesty, I find it hard to feel sorry for the guy. Fortunately for Cain, though, the Lord grants mercy when he brings judgment. But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. There's a little play on words here. Nod means wandering, and so Cain is sent to be a wanderer in the land of wandering. The consequences for Cain are clearly painful, but he will live and be protected. Whatever the mark was that Cain received, it will stop others from doing to Cain what he had done to his brother. While Cain was sent out from the presence of God, he was not sent away from the protection of God. The Lord shows his care even when it isn't deserved. In conclusion, the 2 big takeaway messages for us are, first, to consider whether we are responding to God with faith, and second, what choice are we making about whether to control sin or be controlled by sin? How do our lives reflect a response of true faith in God? Do we do things or give things simply out of routine, or because we want to impress others, or because we're seeking to control God and wanting God to give something to us? Any of these motives could have been what motivated Cain. For us, though, we are to give back to God the best of our lives because God is worth it and we trust him. Giving God the best of our lives will also mean that we control sin, which seeks to control us. Although we are born with the tarnish of sin already upon us, this does not stop us from having responsibility to make choices. We can choose not to sin. Likewise, even when we have failed and have sinned, that doesn't mean that there's no more hope for us. It doesn't mean that we will continue in sin as if it's become inevitable. We have to make the choice to resist sin. We must control sin in our lives, and we should assist others in resisting sin too. Our faith-filled efforts to assist others to choose to control sin in their lives will include working to correct societal structures that hinder people's ability to make good choices. When we live like this, we give our lives as an offering back to God, the very best of our lives, the first fruits and the good portions. May that be what motivates us. May that be what characterizes us. And may you have hope and courage to live for the Lord this week. Amen. Well, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a lovely week.